Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. We're doing this by going through them chronologically, and just looking at the whole story of Jesus in order. It just plays out a little bit different as we'll see as we continue to go through this. Today we're looking at Jesus telling the parable of the unforgiving debtor, and again, this is all in Matthew. A lot of this is in Matthew 18. We've been going through this. Whole thing yesterday we looked at how to confront those who sin against us, and so as this story's being told, as Jesus is telling the apostles and the disciples what to do about someone who sins against them, we see today the parable of the unforgiving debtor. And so what happens is Peter in verse 21 comes to him and says, hey, how often am I supposed to forgive someone who sins against me? Is it 7 times? He's given a good number, 7 times. And Jesus told him, like, no, not 7 times, but 77 times. And what he meant by, like, we shouldn't count to 77, he's using seven as a whole. Seven is a figurative number, which means, complete, and so it's a basically what he's saying here is we are to continue to forgive people and forever, right? And so that's a hard thing, and we're going to look at that. He says, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king, right? Who goes out to bring his accounts up to date with the servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. Now, this is the New Living Translation. We'll get into, I think it's 10,000 talents in the Greek, but it would be equivalent today of millions of dollars. He couldn't pay, so his master ordered that he be sold along with his wife and his children and everything he owned to pay the debt. And so he had to work it off. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, like, it's like, hey, please, be patient with me. I'll pay it all off, knowing he couldn't pay it off. Then this master had filled with pity for him. His master that guy owed him millions of dollars, and he released him and forgave him his debt. So forgave him the millions of dollars. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s, and I think the Greek here is 100 denarii or something like that. And to equivalent to today's time would be by around $1,000, maybe a little bit more. And the fellow servant begged him, "Hey, please be patient with me. I know I owe you a couple $1,000." And he said, "I'll pay it." But the creditor, right, this guy that was just forgiven millions of dollars, wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. And so they went to the king and they told the king, hey, this is what just happened to this guy you just forgave millions of dollars for. And the king called in the man and he had forgiven and said, you are evil servant. He called him evil. He says, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. Never would have been paid, so he would have been tortured forever. So pay attention to verse 35 here. That's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. So I know this is a little bit longer read, and I wanted to go through this because I think it's important, right? The rabbis in this day taught that people should forgive those who offend him, but only 3 times. And so when Peter said 7 times, he was being generous. He was doubling it and adding one. And so we see this, right, and he was using seven, which again, like I said, was the for considered the perfect number, and it was and was enough to forgive someone. Jesus, like, no, not, he said 77 times. So he's taken the perfect number and doing 7 means that we shouldn't even keep track of how many times that we forgive. So no one's going to count to 77 for that. And so that's what Jesus is saying here. And he's saying we should always forgive those who are truly repentant, no matter how many times they ask. And so it's a hard thing, right? Someone hurts you, someone does something to you. It's a hard thing to forgive them. But we have to realize, right? I was listening to something the other day, and it's like, you think about it, right? We cheat on each other, we lie, we steal, we gossip, we do all these things. And it's like, it's like, oh, how can I forgive someone who's done that to you? We do that to Jesus. We do that to God every single day, right? We cheat on God every single day. We 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 steal from God, right? We sin every single day, and God still forgives us. How many sins do you? We probably most of us probably commit 70 sins in a day, and so you know and this is the example that we're to use. And so what Jesus says. So, like I said, Nick, when this guy went to before his master, he owed millions of dollars. It was like 375 tons of silver, something like that. I mean, it was just a ton of money. It'd be 10,000 talents, right? And the talent in that day was the highest unit of currency, but it's, its value fluctuated like our value, like the value of silver and gold fluctuates. And so, the New Living Translation translates this accurately in the fact that it would have been millions of dollars that this guy never would have been able to pay off. And so it was impossible, right? The debt was impossible in this times, right, in back in this day, if you owed someone a debt and you couldn't pay it, then the borrower could seize them, like literally take ownership of, put them in jail until they could pay it, work the debt off. And again, like $1,000 debt, okay, we can do that, we can figure that out. But this guy would have been in jail for absolutely forever. And so the debtor, right, also could be thrown in prison. Talking about they come and they could take the family by force, and they can make them work for them as servants until everything was paid off. They could also throw them into prison until those who knew him could come up with the money. Obviously, he's not going to be able to get the money in prison. And so, what we have to realize here is that what Jesus is showing is that he has completely forgiven us, right? We owed a debt. If you're a Christian, we owed a debt, right? If you're not a Christian, you owe a debt you can't pay. Right? None of us can pay it. None of us can earn it. I don't care how many good things you do. You sin one time in your life, and you can't overcome that. You can't overcome that separation from God. And we all know that we're going to sin a whole lot more than one time in our entire life. And so the simple fact is we cannot pay the debt. And God, Jesus, came and paid the debt for us. So we're forgiven of our debt. We've been released from our debt. When we put our faith in Jesus, right, we're released from that debt. And that's what God is showing us here. And so we can't be like the wicked servant here who, when I'm released from my debt, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to be unforgiving to someone else. God's forgiven me, but I'm not going to forgive you. Man, we can't do that. Where Jesus, he calls it, if we don't do that, he's the example he used, he called him evil, right? In that. And so we see this example where this guy owed a few $1,000, 100 denarii. I think a denarii in that day, one denarii was a day's wage. So it wasn't a ton of money. It wasn't an absolute ton of money, equivalent of $1,000 or a few $1,000s in today's wage. And so we see that the first servant's debt was 1,000,000 times greater probably than the sum owed to him, and he would not forgive. And so when we don't forgive others, right, we're setting ourselves above Christ's law of love. We're setting ourselves better than, oh well, I mean, I don't have to give. Even Christ forgave me, but I don't have to forgive others. Jesus calls you evil if you do that. It's right there. You're evil. And so verse 35 here, right? Verse 35, man, just this is he says, this is what my Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart, right? And I think in some of the context of this, he's talking about brothers and sisters in Christ and not forgiving them, because he was just talking about, like we looked at yesterday, he was talking about forgiving those who sin against you. But we've got to make sure here that we, even those who are not in the church or Christians, we have to forgive them too. We have to forgive anyone who does something against us. And again, one of the things I'll talk to here, because I've heard this taught that, well, if you forgive them, then you've got to like be their best friend again, and no, you don't have to do that. If someone hurts you and like really hurts you, I mean, there's some stuff out there, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but there's some people who've been abused. There's people who've been really hurt out there, and yeah, it's hard. You're gonna have you under the law of Christ, under what Christ says, we have to forgive them, but it does not mean we have to have a relationship with them. It doesn't mean we have to do anything with them, right? So in some cases, you don't even have to let them know you forgave them, right? And they may never ask. A lot of people are never going to ask if for forgiveness, right? If they hurt you, and so what you have to do is just forgive them, right? And again, it doesn't mean you go and seek a relationship with them. You don't have to. That's not what God's telling us to do here. He's saying, we have to forgive people, but we don't have to. We have to be smart with our forgiveness too, right? If we don't just forgive and then absolutely forget everything and then pretend like it never happened, and then let it happen all over again. Or if someone who's abusive to you, go and like try to. You don't have to do that. That's not what this is teaching. And if someone teaches you to do that, be very careful. All right, because that becomes very dangerous and can put you back in an abusive situation. And so you've got to be very careful. Again, And that's where we've got to be careful with this. And so I'll say it now. If someone comes to you and asks for forgiveness, and they're seeking a relationship, and they're truly remorseful and stuff like that, then I'm not saying to be against that, but there's some situations where you don't need to do that, right? You can forgive and move on. And live your life, and that's, that's the kind of things that we need to do. But no matter what, we have to forgive people. And I'll be honest with you, it is hard. It is hard when someone hurts you, someone purposely hurts you, right? I mean, even if they accidentally hurt you or do something to hurt you, but if someone purposely, excuse me, hurt you, it's hard. It's hard to forgive them. It's not a, oh, well, I forgive you and then walk away and never, it's a process. It can take days, weeks, it can take years. And so, but the idea here is that we continue to work to forgive someone. If we absolutely refuse to even try to forgive someone, that's when we get in danger of, like Jesus said, he's like, you're an evil servant, right? You're an evil servant if you don't forgive someone who hurts you and comes and asks for forgiveness. And so, this can be hard, right? This can be hard. This is one of those that's hard for us to take in, right? Sometimes loving people, we like that kind of stuff, right? We like the pretty stuff in this, but this is kind of the ugly, right? This is the ugly part of humanity and being human, is that sometimes, man, we're gonna hurt each other. Sin is ugly, and but in the end, we still have to forgive it, right? Christ forgave us. We have the pardon me, we owe millions, right? We owe them millions, and so we need to forgive the people who owe us just a little bit of money. So again, as always, I appreciate everyone for watching these. If they're helpful, please share them. Um, we're going to continue to put these out. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet, because again, we're going to dive in deeper into some of this stuff, like, a little bit deeper into, the forgiving, the things that really affect our lives, and how do we deal with those things in our everyday lives. So as always, I appreciate you for watching.